Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of What the Deuce. This is the podcast where we discuss shit that we don't talk about generally. Now, for the first episode, we're talking about a topic that is very important to me on a very sub-molecule level. It has to do with education. And it has to do with education in a way that there have been lots of things that have been done for the system throughout the years. But is it still lacking somewhere? And to discuss this, I have a very, very special guest on today. She's been a huge inspiration for me and a huge motivator for me, like during my formative years. We have here Dr. Arpita Karkare today. She's the director at Walnut Schools. And she, like I said, she's been a huge inspiration to me. She's taught me a lot throughout my years. And now let's hear from her. Let's have a quick introduction. Arpita ma'am, it's a pleasure having you here. It's a huge honor. I'm so glad that you came. Thank you for that. So now I'll leave it up to you to give a quick introduction.
So I've been an engineer. I've done my master's in the US and then have all these degrees in education. But largely, right since the end of my 12th grade, I've been working on, I started at a very simple level on how to make content more interesting and easier for the students. And that was probably the best time to start because I was fresh out of that phase myself. And I remembered what was really irritating, what I hated, what was boring, and stuff like that. And over the years, as we've seen how the industry has grown outside and how students kind of struggle through the different phases, especially in an Indian scenario where, there's a completely different language as the medium of instruction and a completely different language that is spoken at home, which is not the case in most of the developed countries where we keep setting our metrics and comparisons to. So, and a lot of aspirational crowd, each generation really wanting the next generation to be really ahead of where they are. So, over the years, we've seen how even those expectations of parents from their kids have evolved and trying to make sure that the students that come through our systems can grow up to be well adjusted individuals and can manage stuff with around them. That's what we've realized is more important than anything else. So, from wanting everybody to score really good marks, I mean, those things still remain as one of the things that we want the students to do. But I also want my children now to be well adjusted individuals who can handle anything that comes their way.
So is this because of something you experienced during your schooling that made you want to kind of bring this change about? So what were those points?
So I remember how frustrated my parents used to be when I went to school because they would not get any logical answers from the school management. There was very little transparency. Sadly, that really still continues even in 2023, 2024. You see that really hasn't changed much. So why not? So that's the reason how the first school that me and my dad co-founded came to be, Millennium National School. So that's where we wanted to be to make sure that parents got logical answers to the questions that they asked, and there wouldn't be illogical things that were happening. And that is the basic fundamental on which the school was built. And obviously, when you want to make sure that you have answers to the questions, a lot of processes have to be logical as well. Otherwise, it's not going to add up. Just being available is not enough. You have to do good stuff as well. So that's how we started trying to make sure, customer satisfaction kind of a thing was never something that schools were actually into. It was more of an attitude issue. This is how we are, take it or leave it. We never wanted that to be.
It's always looked at more of a business than rather a place to actually
It
educate.
has to be financially sustainable. I wouldn't use the word business as a bad word or in a bad tone because financial sustainability is important. It's only in government schools where, somebody else is footing the bill and expenses are not really looked at. That's not how private institutions work. So that's fine. But deliverables, accountability, quality, and the customer satisfaction part. Are you available to, are questions being answered and are things moving in the right way? So I think with just that much, that one thing in mind also puts a lot of other stuff in place directly automatic. After 12th grade, when I started, I was full of energy and enthusiasm to do all this. But the maturity, understanding what is actually going on, that comes as you go older, the wisdom with the gray hair and all of that that comes in. So I find that I am making better changes now. And I'm continuously making changes. We haven't still reached the point where we can say, oh, you know what, the system that we have is great, it's good. And so basically, as the world keeps changing, the way we train the kids that are going to grow up into that world also has to keep changing. So it's not a system that can ever be stable. It is a system that always should keep evolving.
Okay. So moving on to the next segment. So now you're well aware that I had a huge chunk of my education in the US and then a bigger chunk in India. But the biggest difference that I found when I came to India was that there were constant unit exams and end of the year exams and things like that. And the teachers and even parents would always focus on kind of, memorizing answers or mugging up concepts without truly understanding them. So is this still happening in the education system? Is this something that can ever change? Is this something that's supposed to be done? I would love your thoughts on that because I would completely hate mugging up things.
So it's been a while since you were in school. And so, as I said, things keep evolving, things keep changing. So the government systems do realize that things have to change. Of course, their speed of changing is very slow. Their speed of realizing is very slow. It's a little too late, usually. But I run schools that are affiliated to the central board. And they give a considerable amount of freedom till grade 8. They are not, they have suggestions on how the curriculum should be. But schools do have the freedom to choose how to go about the examinations and things like that. Now, the reason why a lot of these mugging up questions still come into play is because creating questions which do not require mugging up requires a lot of intelligence, a lot of hard work.
Okay.
You have to constantly be checking on how the students are answering those questions and whether your questions need to be tweaked. So even coming up with those innovative exam formats where it would not be required. Like, for example, social studies is a subject that requires most of the mugging up that you talked about, right? Now, with all those facts and everything, what else can you do? But that said, if you do not want to focus on the mugging up, like, for example, if you're doing geography and you talk about the different resources in different regions of the country, now you all had to even study the grades of iron ore and in which parts of which districts, what kind of iron ore was coming up and things like that. Now, that is a valid question when you wonder that why do I need to mug up all this information? What am I going to do about it? But then the next level would be that this information is given to you and then questions are formulated according to maybe the topography of the region or something like that. So, what development needs to happen so that this region can economically develop more or something like that. Or what are the hindrances for these are the conditions and now what do you think is stopping it? This requires the team who is setting the evaluations and planning all of that to be very hands-on. And you do not find that in most of the places. Now, what happens in our system is one individual, the teacher, is expected to have multiple skills, like those Saraswati goddesses with 10 arms and 10 different skill sets. Nowhere in the industry do you find that kind of a requirement. So, it is expected that the teacher is a psychologist, a counselor, sometimes even almost into the psychiatrist kind of a thing. Also a special educator, being able to do one-on-one along with doing your 30, 40 kids in a class, understanding the curriculum, planning lessons, developing the pedagogy, developing evaluations and doing all of this and creating reports. These are all different skill sets. This is not something one person can do. And one person definitely cannot do a good job there. So then they end up asking what is the easiest way to go about it. When you have this data, the easiest questions to generate are, hey, Kaushik, tell me what the 3 main iron ore producing districts are and what kind of iron ore do they produce. That's the easiest question to ask. It's going to take me half an hour to plan a test, even a 15-mark test, which does not require you to mug up information over there.
But now when it comes to, suppose, geometry, now I remember when I was in school, we were told to, memorize the theorems. And I never got that because I was never really good at it. and B, I never really understood it because I had to mug it up, right? So when it comes to, well, like, and I realized this much later in my life, like why we had to do geometry and algebra and all these things. It really helps you with critical thinking, problem solving, and it helps strategize. But at that age, when you're really, really ripe in your, that education is just, you're just absorbing everything. When it comes to subjects like geometry and algebra, even science for that matter, is it really the best way to go?
It's not at all a good way to go about. Some memorization is essential. It's a good skill to have, but that cannot be the basis of all your education. And again, one of the reasons there is, as we mentioned before when we started talking, is India has a unique problem as compared to all other developed countries. Our medium of instruction is literally a foreign language for the students. So when there is not enough focus on making sure that they are very comfortable conversing in that language and understanding instructions that are presented to them in either the oral format or the written format in English. When that doesn't happen, it is also difficult to understand a concept. Then it is difficult to assimilate it because you haven't understood it properly. Then when you have to express it, if you don't have the points in your head and you lack the communication skills that are important, how are you going to write it in your own words? When that doesn't happen, what is the next thing that you do? You start mugging up. Now in grade 3, 4, 5, this is a good way out, right? Because the content is limited. Mugging up is even possible. The scope is also limited there for even how long the answers are going to be and stuff like that. But then you get caught in that trap. You have never really worked on understanding conceptually. And it's a hockey stick curve. It takes time initially, but you have to stay with it. And if you stay with the program, then you're good to go. And what happens then is you are spending time mugging up. You cannot do it on your own as you grow older. So you go to tuition classes. So you're doing it in school, then you're doing it again in the tuition classes, and then you still have to go and do it at home. And kids just start developing a hate for this whole concept, especially STEM. We see more and more kids opting out of STEM, and math is hard. Math is not an easy thing at all. But you have to stick with it. That's the reason you have to put in more effort. Because it's harder. And again, it's the same hockey stick thing. Once you get it, once you're on a good path, it's not bad. I mean, logically, things do flow one after the other. But you have to give it that time. You have to let yourself struggle a little. And you have to be given the opportunity to struggle more and come to the right answer. It takes lesser and lesser time going forward. But that is not presented at all. The standard system is the teacher gives a question, the teacher starts solving it on the board or whatever, and everybody just copies it. And the exact same thing happens when you go for tuitions. The tuition teacher there says, or it may be a parent who is sitting with you or a relative, but a person who is doing a one-on-one thing with you will tell you, hey, let me show you how to do it. So it's just like going to the gym, if I don't do the push-up right and you're my coach and you keep showing them by doing them, your muscles are going to develop, not mine. So that's exactly what goes on. So, but that requires a very good pedagogical team. Again, you make a plan and you go into the classroom, and as you see it being executed, you realize, there are hitches, or you feel that a teacher could do this, but the teacher actually can't for various reasons. There may be time constraints. How many human resources can you have in a classroom? All of those things also have to be worked out. You have to keep tweaking it to the point where, yes, now this works. And math again is, not just one skill. One is you have to read the problem. Do you understand English? Can you process it? Do you understand the story that is being told, even with the theorems and stuff that you said? There is so much that comes together and gets applied. And also, when you're solving a problem, you hit a dead end. You should be able to backtrack and try a different approach. You'll get it. It's not that hard. It's hard for whatever, if you're a 10-year-old, it's hard for a 10-year-old, but a 10-year-old with a small amount of struggle can get it. We also need to teach our kids to backtrack and try again. You don't get it at the first attempt and you say, hey, I don't know. And then, you keep putting labels on yourself also. It's not the external world has to do it. This is hard. You've put a label on the thing. I don't get math. You've put a label on yourself. And then you get kind of stuck in these traps. So it's our job as educators to keep showing you that, you know what, try this. And that doesn't have to happen only in the math classroom. So we do board games now with the kids because things dynamically change there, right? And we make them do puzzles because in puzzles, again, there could be a different approach to it. All of us get it at different kind of skills. All your different intelligences also come to work. But basically, you realize that, hey, if I can go back, try it by a different way, and I can reach the same point, that attitude makes a big difference. If you have that attitude at that age, math is okay for you.
So now when it comes to math, of course, there's always one answer to everything. And it's pretty simple when you can see the answer and the work through it. But when it comes to writing longer answers, now correct me if I'm wrong, but are the people who are checking our board exams, are they, are they educators or are they just like, I mean, what position do they hold in their career? The people who are actually checking your papers?
These are all teachers.
Okay.
So when your 10th standard papers are being checked, they're all teachers who are teaching 10th standard students.
Okay.
And again, things have changed from your state board to CBSE and even CBSE over the years. So now in the state board, your questions used to be answered in 80 to 100 words. And we used to tell you that, hey, your answer has to be at least 250.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not going to get your marks. That was how many years ago? I'm happy to say that at least we switched boards also. We went to CBSE. So in central board, their focus is on points. Have you covered all the points? And we do not have such long answers anymore. They are pretty focused on, and social studies, some curriculum has been deleted. That said, there's a lot more work that needs to be done on that front. But again, it's not going to be a fast moving thing, the government machinery. But since we do have enough freedom till grade 8, we can develop these skills. So that's another thing, we also have to teach kids how to take notes, how to get the points from a big extract. So that's also something that in our educational system at Walnut, we work on that, how to transfer information from one form to another. So that's something that we do right from first grade. So what are the main points? So if we teach you as a student in say 7th and 8th grade, how to get the gist out of a long paragraph, you can do it on your own. Then again, you don't need tuitions. And if you can make your own notes, that's like 60-70% of the studying done there itself, right? So you also get time to explore subjects that you like more, or spend a little more time with the subjects that you find you are struggling with a little. So, I mean, I'm okay with kids not wanting to pursue math ahead, but it shouldn't be because they can't do it. It's because they genuinely like something else much more. Instead of, a negative, it's in the negative list that this is stuff I don't want to do. And that's why they're opting out of STEM.
Perfect segue into what I wanted to discuss next is the disconnect between theoretical knowledge and practical skills. Is that still prevalent? Is it being worked on now? Is it different for CBSE and different boards? Or like how's the landscape looking now?
So I would again say that all of this again comes on to how you are evaluating the students. So if I make you do a lot of rote memorization, you are going to obviously feel that this is not a very practical skill that I'm developing. What's the point of all of this? But the same geography stuff, for example, if I give you all the information and ask you to make an analysis, if I ask you to study the sequence of fights that happened in, say, World War II, you would say, what's the use of all of this? But if I give you that and I ask you to pick the event that you felt mattered the most with a justification in about 50 words, around 50 words, then you are developing a skill of how to present an argument, how to convince somebody, and things like that. So the content can be anything. It really doesn't matter. The skill lies in what you are doing with that content.
Correct. Based on actually real world application on what you can do with.
Who are planning your evaluations, they need to really be constantly checking what's going on, what skills are these people, like even graduates. So we are talking about kids in the 10th, 12th, coming out of school at that point from kindergarten. But actually you step into the real world at graduation. So when you step into grad school, undergrad and things like that. Where are the kids struggling? Those are the things that we need to work on in school. Or even we keep talking to the industry and then we see that, oh, these are the basic things, this is something that we should work on in school itself. And that is how you strengthen the kids so that they can, what I said at the beginning, they should be able to handle what comes their way. So developing the skills, so the understanding, the analysis, the expression, the processing in their head, that is important. The content, any content can be used and you have to see, okay, this would fit best for these kind of exercises. That's a lot of work. And that's a lot of skilled work. It's not just for anybody. The more experienced, the more valuable you are. And a lot of schools don't see value in that because everybody just keeps going ahead no matter what, right? Finally, it's the 10th board that you have to appear for. But that is one piece of paper which is important. You should do well. And we do train our kids to do well. But they should be able to do that with significant ease. Then they can handle the difficult stuff that comes. That should not be consuming all of your energy.
Yeah. So now overall landscape that we discussed is quite urban based, right? So when we move on to the rural sectors of the country, are these changes being applied there as well? Or how is the overall education system in rural areas happening?
I would even say they are being applied in the urban scene. That way, it is not very different. It is just the per capita income is different. But the ways of teaching, the infrastructure is fancier in the urban schools. But now even the rural private schools are coming up with, infrastructure muscle is the easiest to flex. You spend a bunch of money upfront and you have housekeeping and it all looks good. But what goes inside, you can have the fanciest smart board in the classroom, but what are you teaching on it? So that is not different in the urban or the rural scenarios because the thought process really hasn't changed. There's a lot of work that has to be put into doing this. And you will not find most people who are into running schools willing to put in that kind of expertise. And when you say that there's a lot of work and you need a lot of smart people, it obviously comes at a higher cost, right?
Absolutely.
So if a teacher can just do something in the classroom and most of the parents are okay with it, most of the parents don't even realize that there are better ways of going about it. So, because they haven't seen them, right? If you have grown up in a certain way and you see that there's some delta change that has happened when your kids are going to school and you're usually busy with your own routines and things like that. So, that's not something that there are too many demands made on that front. Demands are made for different things like what food are you serving my child, what's the bus like and things like that. Those things are, that's fine. I'm not discounting any of those things. They're all important from a parent and a child's perspective. But this long-term investment, the nursery to even 10th, if you look at it, it's 13 whole years that you're spending, the formative years of your life. So what are you doing with my child's mind, the thought process? That's not a question anybody asks.
Exactly. It's definitely more in the rural side because the overall lack of awareness and importance for education, which I think is kind of changing now with my generation kind of getting into very good.
Rural, actually, everybody knows education is important, but rural or urban, what is actually good education? That question is not answered right.
Yeah. So there's no beat set.
The right questions are not asked or the right expectations. There's more parent education required here. How your child should be getting exposed to information, how your child should be taught how to process information to go ahead. But so people feel, what this goes on to is marks don't matter. That is the feeling that comes in. And then, there are a lot of these examples where people say, hey, I did really badly in school. Look at me now. And stuff like that. But that is again where I feel that the evaluation has to be done properly. The training for evaluation has to be done properly. If this kid is doing really well now as an adult, this was a smart kid to begin with. So somewhere there was a big gap in the way the questions were asked and evaluations were done, things like that. You were only, like when you were growing up, right? That was largely the case. Rote memorization and very long answers. So, but things are changing a lot. So now it's, we don't see that much of a discrepancy in how they're doing and because of the way we go about schooling. That's how everybody should. That's the question. Those are the things you should be asking the school and getting answers, satisfactory answers for it.
We just spoke about, how importance of education and importance of degrees and for your future and how important exams actually are. So which brings me to my next question. Earlier, like when my parents used to be in school or when they were studying, those degrees were very important because it was their way out of, a situation that probably wasn't the best at that time. And it kind of opened up a lot of doors for them. But when it comes to, post my generation, post me finishing my 12th and all, is the emphasis on degree, is it an overemphasis? Are they still as important as we feel they used to be?
So, unpopular opinion is what I'm going to give you right now. What I've seen is basically, there's a very small bunch of people who you find are doing well in spite of not having the formal degrees and stuff like that. And then there are many who are doing well with all the right qualifications in place. There is a big common factor between both of these groups, and that is they both got hustle. So whether you go in, there is no shortcut to success. You have to put in the hard work. Some kids choose to put it in a different, you shouldn't call them kids, some adults, young adults, choose to channelize it in a different way. But you have to put in the hard work. You have to put in the hours. You have to do all of those things to get to any point of success. If you're just going to sit and watch TV or, hang out, watch movies, do social media and all the time pass, nothing is going to happen. You can sit and blame the whole world and blame systems and all of that, but you have to do it. We have seen so many of our students who chose unconventional paths, but they really, really, really had hustle. And they've gone, students from the batches that were students from your batch, students from your junior batches, who have gone and done so many different things. You yourself tried out so many things. Where was there an easy way out of anything? Never. And there are certain things, like for example, if you're doing, if you want to go in for some medical sciences, something like that, you have to go through all of that, right? You have to get the proper training, otherwise you're not going to do a good job. If you want to do structural engineering, you have to know how materials work, you have to know how forces work, you have to understand the math behind it. The harder the stuff is, the more complicated the stuff is that you want to do. Sometimes you need a license. Like you want to practice medicine, you want to do surgery, you need a license. You have to go through all of that training. If you want to do software programming, you do not require a degree. But you do not require a degree is not another way of saying you do not require the knowledge. You require the knowledge. And in fact, to be successful in certain fields, your degree is incidental. Your knowledge is important. GitHub is your resume at times. But there is some way in which you're evaluated. A degree is one way of setting expectations of the other person that this is what I know. And showing your work, your portfolios is another way. They are all equivalent. So I would not say that they are not important. They are one way of presenting. And there are many ways of presenting. But you definitely need to have the material. You need to have the content and you need to put in the hours. You cannot be thinking of your work-life balance and all of that. If you want to achieve a certain level, you can always find what makes you happy. But if getting to a certain point in your career in terms of either what payout you're making from all of that, or what recognition you have achieved, or what network you have developed, whatever it is.
So I asked this actually because of a personal experience of mine, is that when I came back from the US, I came back with, now by the time I came back, I had around 11 years of experience in marketing. But then when I started to apply for jobs, because I really didn't want to start my own company anymore at that time because of lots of things that happened, like post-COVID and everything. I didn't want to start my own company and I wanted that stability to kind of regain what I've lost over the past couple of years. But even having the experience, having the type of work under my belt where it was, done the type of work that people generally don't do even in their jobs, with a formal education or a, degree. But I was always kind of, my resume was always kind of put to the side because I don't have an MBA. And I had never wanted to do a master's degree because I got a job in my second year of graduation. So I've always worked since then. For me, the practical and, on the job knowledge was more important and helped me more. But then why the sudden, or why the emphasis so much on that MBA degree for me not to get that job or that grade or that?
It works as a demand and supply thing. Maybe there are so many people with the degree and the experience that you have also, that is possible. So there are realities that we do not like to examine because sometimes they are not favorable to us. But it is possible that, there are people who keep cribbing about why is the IIT JEE, for example, so competitive? Why do you have to take these kind of tests? But when there are so many people, when there's such a huge pool of applicants, and you only can select so many, you have to go on applying some filter or the other. So if there's one job opening and there are like 100 applicants, how are they going to make pies? I mean, what would you do in that situation? So all things being equal, then you go on saying, okay, so many years of experience. So you discard some. You keep making it to say 3 rounds of the pile. You're still in the pile. Your resume is still in the pile. But then all things being equal, somebody else has a little more on paper to show than you. So that's what I said, that it's not that the degrees aren't important. And the examples that are usually quoted here are, for example, Bill Gates dropped out of college.
What do you know about Harvard?
No, but Bill Gates was doing programming for the longest time. He knew so much already, and he was already right from high school. I mean, there are so many books that tell you Bill Gates' story right up to that point. And he was doing it. He had already developed it, and he was working hard. He was working really, really hard. He was putting in more hours than he was putting in college. The focus is not that he dropped out of Harvard. It's all of those other things, but that's what we focus on. And how many others do you know who have been able to do that? It's because of that hustle, right? I mean, if you read that Outliers book, that tells you how Bill Gates even got to that point. How many hours? 10,000 hours of practice to do anything.
It's a masterly.
Yeah. So those are things that we conveniently ignore. We just look at the last part, he didn't finish college. Like, dude, he knew much more. So it's fine if you don't have a degree, but then a degree is a way of saying, hey, I know this much. I am as good as these other people, and then I have all this experience as well. Or then you have to show that, oh, I know so much more. And then nobody's going to look at your degrees. But you can't feel that, hey, it's me. I'm here and look at me. Why do I need a degree?
Me.
If you're being discarded for that reason, clearly it's not something that's not important anymore. It is important. And in some way you have to show what you know.
So now when it comes to, now this is more of a question on as educators and as well as the parents of these kids, is that throughout school, throughout college, we're always it's always imbibed in us ki, aage jaake job lena hai, right? You have to go work. No one, and I'm not sure if things have changed now, but everyone is always talking about getting jobs or, being employed somewhere, getting that job where degree lena hai so you can get a job, you can secure a future. But no one's ever talking about being an entrepreneur. No one's ever talking about, starting my own business, starting my own startup. Now, startup is a fairly new concept, probably in the last 10 years, which has kind of gained more traction now. But no one ever spoke about, like, even when I went to school, and even I never did. I always spoke about getting a job as well. So is this because of, societal factors? Is this because of how things just happen in India? So why does this happen? Why aren't people talking about, personal success?
Again, I don't see that as a bad thing, because getting a job I don't see a negative tone to that at all. Getting a degree and getting a job, and you can do a very good job in your job. And it's not like a very limited thing anymore. Again, when we're talking 2024, there are entrepreneurs also. Basically, what do you even mean when you say somebody is an entrepreneur? Or even you say you want to start your own business? There are so many more factors to it. I mean, if you are technically sound, you are better off starting in something that you are trained in.
Yeah.
And then figuring out all the other stuff that goes around it. When you do a business, I mean, because I'm, say, a good programmer, I'm going to keep switching to those things because I'm a STEM graduate. But if I'm a programmer and I write really good code, that is one skill. But when I require to have a company, when I have to start a company and keep it financially sustainable, there are many, many other factors that come into play. I need the funds, first of all, which I may arrange in whatever way, but I need to be financially sustainable after that. I need to figure out how to hire people, how to make sure they are doing their jobs right, how to evaluate them, how to give them pay packages, how to secure sales, how to give after sales service, uh, everything, even, a light bulb isn't working, the internet is down. All of those things are my problems. I have to maintain accounts, taxation, compliances, rules, and regulations. So basically, can you do one thing, then can you manage a different thing, not multiple things in the same vertical is the first thing. When you do that, then can you start looking at other verticals? Do you understand that? Just jumping into something because it's a fancy word or it seems right is also the reason why so many of these businesses go completely bust. The spray and pray philosophy that investors have, those ratios are so dismal because most of the times, even like my husband is a judge on many of these competitions where they come up with ideas. They have not even done their basic research. When you ask questions, they do not have satisfactory answers or adequate information about anything. Most of them don't. That's a huge population because I don't want to do a job. I want to go and do a business. What's the difference? Do you know what the difference is? Can you first handle a job? Then we will see if you can take on a business. You will see or figure out the skill sets and work. When I talk to these youngsters, the ones that I talk to, many times I come across answers like, "So I will be master of my own time." Like, no, no. You are in a job, you can probably say, "Hey, you know what? I'm taking 3 days off." I don't think you can do that when you're running the ship. And many people that I know in jobs can't do that either because jobs are not like that. Now, unless you're going in for like a very low level thing, where you say that, okay, I'm cutting off. It's 5 p.m. I'm not going to talk to anyone anymore. People who are working for me are not like that.
Yeah.
And none of them are like that. It doesn't work like that anymore. So I would not say a job is a bad word at all. There are, in fact, it's a great time to be an employee with the way they are being moved by companies because there's such a shortage of good people. If you're good, if you're sincere, if you're willing to constantly keep upgrading yourself, there is no shortcut anywhere. Business is not easy. Business is way harder because now you have to deal with people like yourself who will be coming in and you don't know if they're coming in with good intentions.
So you spoke about, shortage, right? A shortage of experience, shortage of expertise, shortage of resources. Does that also apply to the education system in terms of teacher?
Absolutely. There's a shortage of good human resources. We have a lot of humans, but
They're not resourced.
they're not resourceful. Yes. So that is a problem in all industries. Also, sticking with a job is no longer what people do. So in schools, but the funny thing is that we have a lot of parents who come in from different industries who's jumping jobs themselves, doing very well, finding better opportunities and all of that. Very smart parent community. But their expectations from school, certain things are frozen in your mind. Like these things shouldn't change. So how did your teachers change? Then when we asked them, like, do you plan to retire from the first job that you took? No. Then why would you expect a teacher to as well? I mean, everybody's going to be doing that all the time. Like, teachers change jobs. So that is an issue. Quality human resources are an issue in this industry more so than others, probably for the reasons why a lot of people join in. But there are workarounds with good system-based learning approaches and good planning. ahead of time. The training that you keep having for the team continuously, because people are going to keep coming and going. So your training thing has to go on as a constant thing in the back.
So L&D for teachers is actually like, is that a thing? Does that have like learning and development for teachers? Does that happen in today's world, or is it something, is it still new?
Um, Upgrading your own skills is something that every individual has to decide for themselves. So in any organization, again, you can't force it on any. Are you a lifelong learner? Is a personality thing. So we don't have many of those. The proportion is lesser. We do have we have a bunch of really, really good people on our team, even at Walnut. And those are the ones that take up leadership roles and start managing more and move higher and higher up in the organization.
But it isn't as isn't those kind of lucrative enough for people to like kind of upskill themselves. Just the fact that you can go in your career, you can be your
And that's for the whole world, right? But how many people do you actually find doing that? Because it's hard work. You have to do it outside of your time. So you really need to be invested in, you really need to have that capacity for hard work in you. And you can always come up with a million excuses, right? You can say that, oh, I have this, I have that, I have to do this at home, I have to do that at home, and all of that. And then there are people who do it still. So again, it comes back to the earlier point, hustle. You have it in you. So whether it's a job or a business, do you have the hustle and are you willing to put in the work? Those are the two basic questions that go on for pretty much everything that we go on.
So now coming to the last segment, just one last thing that I wanted to speak about is now since you come from a more of a tech background and you understand the nuances of it, the adoption of tech has been very slow in schools, right? And I don't think this is just an Indian thing. I think it's been everywhere. Even studying in the US as a kid, tech wasn't given that much emphasis before. Yeah, we were given access to computers and all very early on, but what is the reason for slow adoption of tech? Because it's everywhere. And apart from the cost element of it.
Well, teaching them computers or
Access to technology. Yeah, access to tech and tech
as a tool.
Using tech as a, yeah.
So using tech as a tool, first of all, if you look at the per capita income in the US and in India, we are way off. I mean, our prime minister is hoping that we become a developed country by 2047. So that is what, $20,000 mean income is what the developed country thing is today. Maybe different by the time we get to 2047. But we are somewhere at $1,500, right? $1,600.
Yeah.
So way off. It's like a dream right now. Even get that. When you have, like we are a private school. We run on the fees that parents pay. We have a computer set up in every classroom so that the material is directly, the digital material all comes there directly. We have a computer for every teacher, every core subject teacher in the staff room so that they can go through the material. They have time to get prepared for their classes, interact with parents in parent-teacher meetings and stuff like that. It is a challenge to keep the network up and running. We have 3 high-speed internet connections just for the redundancy because things just come to a standstill without it. It is difficult to get good system administrators. It is difficult to make sure that, the mouse, the keyboard, everything in every classroom is in working condition, devices are charged and all of that. So it's not easy using tech. In fact, it's easiest to use no tech. It's very expensive and very tedious to keep everything maintained. So you find that in a lot of even these rural schools, that these different Rotary clubs and all of them come together, they get the funds and they set up computer lab. And then the computer labs are covered nicely with cloth and also that they don't catch dust. And it's kept like that because one rat can come and eat up some part of your wiring and your network is lost.
So now with all these Upgrad and Coursera and all these online tools for upskilling and learning, and this kind of, trickled down into schools as well during COVID. Did you find that was a paradigm change in terms of how these kids were taught or how their attitudes kind of changed towards everyday learning when they were kind of ripped out of the classroom and put into their homes?
Not really.
No.
I didn't see much of a change there. In fact, there's where the kids had an advantage. It took a long time for most of the teachers all over the country, all over the world, to figure out how the kids were pulling a fast one on them. Because that's their playground, right? They are much better at it, at handling all of this, and it's natural. I mean, the operating systems, the way these devices work, are made so that those kids understand it better, and we did not grow up with that, so it takes us a little longer to get onto that, onto what's actually going on. But again, if you like learning, you find a way. So even with all these, there are plenty of free online courses available. Lots of IITs and MIT and IIMs have put up so much stuff for free out there. How many people are actually doing anything with it? That percentage is very small. So again, you got hustle.
But is it digital learning? Is it still kind of part of Walnut? And so, something out of classroom.
Yes, we do. We do have some courses going on in parallel, even digitally, but we have realized that it is only the ones who are actually motivated to stay there. So the stuff that we do for the kids who are willing to take it on are the things that we go on the online coaching. So, for example, when we do the 5th and 8th grade scholarship training, we do that online because these are students who want to do it. Then it's an excellent platform because the logistics are completely eliminated, right? Getting to school, these are kids who still require parents to drop them up and pick them up and all of that. So that completely eliminates that part. We can have our resources that are teaching sitting at multiple locations, the kids at multiple locations. The material is made available to them earlier on the day in digital format and print format and all of that stuff. That goes really beautifully. They can keep asking questions on the classroom as and when they have difficulties, and they can be handled asynchronously, so everybody gets their answers in a good time. So it's actually wonderful. If you are using the resources, if you choose to sit back and not do a thing, then it's easy to miss out a child entirely because it's you can't keep a record of this child answered, this child did. It's hard, and nobody wants to put in that much work just to get kids on the wagon. So it's wonderful if you're motivated, but then what isn't?
Well, ma'am, this has been a wonderful conversation. I've learned, I'm still learning every day, and I've learned a lot just sitting across from you on this table as well. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being the very first guest on my podcast, and I hope to have you soon again sometime, probably with another unconventional or controversial topic, which I'll probably think of sometime soon. But for now, thank you so much. It's been an honor.